Welcome back to Breaking the Silence Project, and this is our In Conversation series. And today I have Greg Bishop, and I know a lot of you will know who he is because he's wrote a book that I'm forgetting the name on, Project Beta. You've been on a lot of podcasts, and you've spoken at Contact in the Desert. And welcome to the show, Greg.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for inviting me. This is cool.
Well,
I've not been on this show before. I've thought about it, and it's like you should be on Steve's show, and I hadn't bugged you about. I usually don't bug people to be on, so
no,
you
I
asked,
never do.
and I said yes.
Yeah, I never do that either. I don't chase down people. If they contact me and they have an interest, that's great. Um, we tend to be, not tend to be, we are very genuine about this experience, about this subject matter, and we work with experiencers all the time. We've got quite a community that's formed around us over the last 2.5 years. Uh, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm an experiencer myself, and I've been known as one for a very long time, going back into the '90s. Um, but there's still it takes time to get people's trust, and it's understandable
Yeah,
because a lot of the channels in mainstream media. I'll give a good example of what mainstream media does to people who have these experiences. I give you the Manhattan abduction uh, film that was on Netflix that was just a very, very bad thing that was done. Uncalled for, unfair, biased. Um, I don't know if you ever met Bud Hopkins,
yeah, I did
but
meet him. Actually, he was in a documentary I shot a really, really long time ago in the late '80s. We shot it on 3/4 inch tape.
yeah, I remember that. I mean, you're talking to someone who's been who started with 8 millimeter, went to 16 millimeter, went to 35 millimeter when I started working at the American Zoetrope with Francis Copeland. And I just went from there. So I've been on this subject just like you. We've both been on this subject a very, very long time.
Yeah,
This isn't something new for us, and it's been amazing to watch the evolution of it. Not all good either, and but there has been. But I just think what Netflix and other mainstream channels have done with this subject, with the exception of Spielberg's 4-part special um, about this subject, was very well handled, I thought. Just the way his film was very well handled. So,
oh, Taken. Yeah, I never saw all of that.
no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the 4-part
Oh,
series that was on Netflix, probably the last thing he'll ever do with
oh,
that.
yeah, that's right. That was way more recent. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, he even put in an Easter egg in the first episode, which just kind of knocked me out of my chair. He showed this guy here. That's me in the movie The End of the World. And the poster for The End of the World was this. It was a movie with Christopher Lee,
Uh-huh.
and this was 1977, I believe. That's how far this goes back.
Yeah.
And so he had uh, a clip in the show at the very beginning showing me moving in that mask and costume I built way back when, and it just cracked me up. So, but we've
That's
both been
great.
doing this for a very, very long time. Now, you kind of responded to what I wrote about my uh, reaction to the film and what happened the very next day. I forget how you put it exactly, but it
I
was
said, like many abductees and experiencers, those scenes with the children in Disclosure Day triggered many memories.
I wonder how many memories it triggered with people who were totally unaware that it was even happening to them.
Maybe kind of like communion, but it's the next iteration of that or the latest iteration of that. And then uh, there are scenes of you as a child in But Something Is There, and that
Yes.
also was not very similar, but it's the same vein as Disclosure Day because this is what people report.
Yeah.
So the thing that impressed me about the film, I was all prepared to not like it,
Right.
But I'm older and I realize that people aren't going to cater to my personal views about what things are. So you
No.
have to take kind of a broader view of it and say, look, and I think a writer from France named, I think it's Philippe Guillemot, he
Hmm.
wrote, I quoted him in some, can you hear that? Okay. I want to make sure you couldn't, there's a helicopter going over because I'm in LA.
Oh, well,
Um,
yeah, I'm familiar with that, especially
anyway,
in
he,
LA.
I quoted him in a, yeah, I quoted him in a post and he said, basically what he said was, what this is doing, as far as he was concerned, is opening things up so that a that people could accept that this would be that this kind of stuff could be looked at and be studied and be accepted as something that's actually happening, and that will change the way that we look at data and the way we look at how we accept these things. He just said, "Look, it's part of a shift. I think it's opening that up," and I that's kind of what I wanted to say about the film. No, it's not exactly what everybody wants. Yes, it's a Spielberg film and it has a wonderful chase sequence in it and all the pulling on the heartstrings and all that. But the point is, it's a what did I the other thing I called? Oh, somebody. I have an abductee friend that was complaining about it,
Me
experience or whatever you
too.
call it.
Me
Yeah,
too.
and he said he was criticizing it, and I said, look, everybody needs a gateway drug, and this might be it for some people for this subject and treating it this way. And they'll look into it and they'll find it's sort of like the film, but it's far richer and deeper than that.
Right. Did you know what I found with most of the people who had a problem with it was that they never saw the last trailer. They never saw the interviews he did on numerous well, like for instance Sunday Good Morning, he did an incredible interview. It was really well done. The interviewer really knew the right questions to ask him, and no one saw it. And if they had seen it before, they'd realize the film was really kind of something he just wanted to do. He didn't care, how it really did at the box office. Not really. He didn't care about it pleasing everybody. He wanted to make something that was that had heart when it came to this subject. Yeah, you had to have car chase sequences and things like that. If you want the bean counters to give you money to make a film, even if you're Steven Spielberg, they're going to have their input, and
Yeah,
you're
and
going to
there's
have
not even a
strong.
love story in it,
No,
which is
you have
unheard
to.
of.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, and you always have to make compromises. And after all the years I've been in filmmaking and in the movie business, I know that, and it's unpleasant, but it's there. But the few things, like the scene with the house
Hmm.
and the kids, that was extremely hard to get through. Stone face without a tear in my eye. It was impossible.
Yeah,
And the people I was with was the same thing because um, it took me right back to being at my grandmother's house and at my house in San Francisco and all the other houses I were at that were like that house, just like that. And the feeling and that something from my perspective as a child was wonderful that was happening to me that was so far removed from this sort of, to me as a child, a mundane world that really was deprived of magic by the
hmm,
adults who said that get used to being boring and get used to you know falling in line and growing up and doing what you're supposed to do and all that stuff. And here I had this big secret going on every night or practically every night that I couldn't share with anybody. And that was all encompassed in that scene for me.
yeah,
Um, so it was very real. And I do not have the perspective that this has been a threat. I'm still here alive talking to you. And as I said before, I may not even be alive if it wasn't for my interaction with these beings. I
mm,
certainly wouldn't be aware of non local consciousness and my connection with the universe and nature on the level I am now. So,
yeah.
Greg, you've never had any experiences yourself. Have you been witness to uh, anything in the sky? I mean, what got you so interested in the subject and so involved that you've been with it all these years?
I don't know, Steve. Although the first time I met
Uh-oh.
first time I met Carla Turner, I told her what had happened to me the night before I was going to talk to her. I woke up at 1:11, 2:22, 3:33, 4:44, 5:55, and she said, "Maybe I should interview you. Maybe we should have you under hypnosis." And I said, "No." And that was the only time that kind of pattern happened. Something may have happened in my life. I started reading these books when I was a small child, and I just voraciously read first UFO books and then paranormal books, cryptid, things like that, as much as I could possibly. It was almost exclusively what I read from probably 5 years old to maybe 12 or something. I would only read slightly other books that didn't have to do with the paranormal.
Right.
Um, and then I lost interest in it through my teenage years and college. Then after college,
Yeah.
I had a horrible depressive I mean, like close to suicidal depression, and I I realized I would either have to, one, kill myself, or two, decide that everything was going to be okay for a while and see how that worked out. And it worked out great. And very soon after I made that decision, I discovered the subject again, started writing about it, and it almost, as I said to a friend earlier today, it became a second education for me. I did my own ufology college or something on my
Yeah.
own and with my friends, and published a magazine about it. And that just sort of got me right back in the middle of it. And I haven't stopped since then. That was 91. We did that.
What was the magazine?
It was called The Excluded Middle.
Huh. How did I miss
And we,
that? Because
well,
the
it was a very small press run. We printed like maybe between 2 and 5,000, and we sent them out to distributors. I mean, this was old fashioned zine stuff. Um,
right. Yeah. Fanzines,
Mostly
we called them.
pre-internet, and it was, you know, it people found out about it just by seeing it on newsstands. And I didn't do interviews anywhere or anything like that. We were just throwing it out into the world, my friends and I, because we wanted to, and we wanted to learn. It was just a kind of a labor of love, and then it became almost a calling after that. And then we stopped publication in 1999. David Childress at Ventures Unlimited put out a collection called Wake Up Down There, which was most of the stuff in the magazine and some extras. And after that, a couple of years after that, I wrote Project Beta, and I was kind of off to the races.
Wow. So I have not, I was not aware of Project Beta. Can you tell us a little bit about that book? And of course, it is available on Amazon. And in the edit, I will be putting up a picture of the book cover and
Yeah.
where they can get it.
Yeah, that was the first, book I wrote completely by myself, and it was on contract with Simon and Schuster. Actually, Pair of You Pocket, which was imprint of Simon and Schuster. So we had the machinery of Simon and Schuster to do the publicity and all that. What it was a story of a guy who was studying UFOs, and he said he saw them flying around near his home, and he started video and taping and filming them. Late 70s, so really bad videotape and 8 millimeter film.
It was
Um,
terrible.
yeah, extremely low res videotape. Even though, I mean, like the worst 525 line scan that you could think of was
Yeah.
this, you know, and
640 by 480
yeah, exactly. Whatever that is, to 2 by 3 or whatever I can't remember what.
NTSC.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just
yeah,
horrible stuff. And
yeah,
that was Paul Benowitz.
yeah. That was Paul Benowitz, and he wrote to the Air Force and said, "Hey, I'm seeing this stuff over the base. Do you know you have UFOs there?" And they were thinking, that's not really UFOs. That's stuff we're working on. So they called him in, and he told them what he was seeing. And they, instead of telling him, no, that stuff we're working on, because that they're not supposed to tell him that, they said,
Right.
that's very interesting, Paul. Why don't you keep telling us what you're seeing? Because they wanted to know what he was seeing, how he was seeing it, and maybe even more importantly, who might be talking to him. Meaning foreign adversaries. They didn't care about ufologists. They don't care about them at all.
Oh no,
Um,
they don't like us.
Well, it's, I think to me the intelligence community and the government thinks that ufologists are useful when they're useful, and an annoyance when they're not. That's about it. Not even an
Yeah.
annoyance. I mean, they don't even think about it. That's my view of it anyway. There may be individuals that have different feelings about it. Anyway, so they didn't tell him to cease and desist. They just told him, keep showing us stuff. So he said, okay, I'm working with the Air Force. And a bunch of people are at that meeting too. people from the base and a guy from the NSA who was there. No, he had a office mate that was there. He wasn't there. He said people just started leaving when they realized it had nothing to do with their projects, and then a couple people were left at the end who did have to be concerned. Anyway, as time went on, he started getting more and more scared. More and more, he would think of something, and then he would believe it, which is something that happens a lot with UFO researchers, and it's happened a lot politically recently too. But
It happens with experiencers too.
yeah,
It's a fine line.
yeah. So he was destabilized by this in the first place, and then he just decided to keep. He would go further and further and further off the beam and off the story, and Air Force Office of Special Investigations, NSA, whoever else was watching him, they didn't care as long as he didn't talk about what he was seeing in any way that was close to what it was. And so he eventually ended up in a mental health care facility that his
Uh,
family put him in there because they were worried about him. This took about 5 or 6 years, and he was in there for a
what
couple of
year?
months.
What year was this?
77 or 8 to 1982 or 3, somewhere in
Right,
there.
right, right.
So Reagan era, all that. He and so he after that he kind of calmed down. I mean, he's still interested, but his the paranoia and all that came down quite a bit. And the reason I was able to do this book is because Bill Moore, the guy that wrote the Roswell incident, the original
Yeah,
one, he
sure.
co-wrote it with Charles Berlitz. He's a friend of mine, and he said he told me what was going on, and it was one of my book proposals was maybe I should talk about Benowitz. So he actually helped me be able to talk to intelligence people, people outside the intelligence network, all that, to try and get an idea of what was going on. But his part in this, which he admitted at MUFON, the National MUFON meeting in 1989, which I was at, was that he knew what was going on. He knew that Paul was going more and more, getting more and more unstable. And he was actually tasked. He said, they told me what they would do was give me UFO information, like classified documents about UFOs, if I would watch Paul and tell them what he was doing and who he was talking to, and also other ufologists. Not because they wanted to know what they knew about UFOs. They wanted to know if they were talking to anybody they shouldn't be talking to. It's like, I saw this thing over this base and I took a video of it, and some Russian guy or Chinese is gonna say, "Oh, that's very interesting. Can I have a copy of that tape?" And then they can use it to triangulate whatever their other intelligence was. So that's what they were worried about. They weren't worried about people studying UFOs. They were worried about national security. And so, and then Richard Doty, who people probably know about,
Oh yeah.
was the main person at the base in OSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations. It's like the Air Force's FBI, who was uh, tasked to to watch Paul Benowitz and watch Bill and sort of communicate with Bill about what was going on, pass that information up the chain. And he had some access to what he needed to know and other access he didn't have. And, in the final analysis and I've talked to Bill about this, and what I've been able to conclude and where I am right now is that the Benowitz operation, you read that book and you think it's this big thing that took up, all of these people's time and energy. And it was part of a massively huge operation to try and figure out where their intelligence leaks were and plug them up and get rid of the people that were the leaks.
Huh.
And this was one cog in a giant machine. Like if you had a giant clock that was, a 300-pound clock with 1,000 gears in it, it would have been one gear or one cog in one of those gears.
Yeah.
It was much bigger because people in the UFO community think it's like, well, it was here, they were there just to drive Paul crazy and discredit ufology. No, that was a result of it. And I think they're culpable for not really caring what happened to him mentally, totally. But that wasn't the object. The object was to flush Soviet and Chinese moles and to plug up leaks. And I mean, as a result of this operation, Doty told me this, so who knows? But
Yeah.
as a result of this operation, they did catch a few people, and these guys were driving around the United States, measuring distances on the highway because and stopping at facilities and saying, "Hey, we're UFO researchers. What have you got?" And when they were about to leave the country, said the FBI or somebody swooped in at the restaurant and arrested both of them.
Huh.
So I don't know if that happened, but it sounds like something that would be a result of this kind of operation. So, like, and another thing I was told by one of these people is when the UFO community gets is notified of something by the government, it's not for them. It has nothing to do with their interest in UFOs. It has to do with how can we use the UFO subject as a tool to do what we need to do.
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at what's going on now. I think that's what they were trying to do, and I think it's metastasized into a huge thing that they didn't expect, and they're trying to whoever it is that's interested in doing this is trying to still trying to control it in a way that's advantageous.
I'd like to get your take on something that happened to me, and this was back during the 90s. You talked about helicopters, and I got a lot of pictures of them hovering right over my
Hmm.
house, following my wife home down the street, causing the whole neighborhood to come out and see what was going on as they hovered over our driveway. My wife at this point was so terrified she wanted me out of this subject. And I guess this was actually around about 1998 when it really got to its peak. My mail was being blocked, money being sent to me for my art, for the busts that I made, the things that Chris Carter bought from me, and other people collecting my art were being sent back, no such address. The phone was tapped. I had it checked. It was. I had people in my bushes at night. I'm just going to make this short as I can.
Oh,
But I
I had my
also
mail opened and weird phone calls too for
I
a while.
wasn't
Go
getting
ahead.
it at all. I had
Uh,
my late wife had to go to the post office to find out what was going on, and basically they said we can't help you, lady.
yeah,
Um,
that's what they
but I
told
got
me.
emails. I got emails. Yeah, join the club. I got emails. I don't know if you got emails like this. One was from the NSA. One was from the CIA, and they both said the same thing. You had agreed never to talk about this stuff, and you need to stop now. I never knew if those emails were legit or not. I had a couple people look into it, and they really couldn't tell. You couldn't write back to them, of course.
Mm-mm.
And I also, um, when I was at a MUFON meeting, I don't know. Do you remember the meetings that used to happen in Newbury Park? Were you ever at those?
I was at a couple of them. I thought you were going to say the ones that used to happen at the skating rink in Burbank. Remember those?
Yeah, I do. And
Way, way, way back when. But I've been
yeah,
to a few of the Moore Park ones. Yeah.
okay. Well, so there was this very charismatic gentleman who I later saw in pictures with MUFON people, balding, kind of a butterball, really nice face, glasses. Came up to me while I was waiting to, because I was speaking in those days. No one
Hmm.
asked me to speak anymore, but back in those days they did, and I would show my art and talk about my experiences. And I'm standing in the dark there, waiting for the current speaker to be finished, and he walks up to me and he actually showed me his ID and he said, "Steve, what are you doing here? You know, you agreed never to talk about this stuff. Now, I sent you uh, an email to the story I wrote um, about how my memory became crystal clear, uh, agreeing when I was a child not to talk about this for my safety. And I agreed never to talk about it.
Hmm.
Um, and I went against that, and it hurt my career and everything else. Was it a coincidence, or how did this guy, who may or may not have been CIA, I don't know for sure, how could I know, knew about that? Or was it just a good guess? What do you make of that? Because I've never been able to really, they would
And
say to me that they knew somehow, that I
yeah,
had made an agreement with the Grays,
and
that
you
they knew.
never talked about that publicly until that point.
Oh, about the fact I agreed not to talk about it.
No, about the fact of getting those emails.
No, I talked about the emails.
Okay.
I was on
Well,
national television.
that's kind of
Yeah,
a leak to whoever wants to mess with you, whether they're CIA or not. Oh yeah,
yeah.
let's because you've given them a reference point, whether it was from them or not. And I don't know
Well,
if it's, another group or a private company or pranksters or what, but it's unnerving, yes.
yeah, there was something going on back then because up how I met Whitley is he called me one night because there was a comic book called uh, Beyond Communion that I was going to do art for.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll be putting a picture up at the cover in the edit. And so we got to be friends. I think it was like 92 or 3, somewhere in there. Um, and he was very taken with my art because the Greys were portrayed much closer to what he knew than anything he had seen at that point. And I believe it was right around that time that I started going to a hypnotherapist. I'm not going to talk names, but um, uh, and started working with that person. And it was right after I started working with that person that the hounding began. I started getting
Mm.
I've had people come over late at night from the studios to my workshop on my home in Granada Hills, and it would be late at night because that's how the movie business works. You're handing stuff over to be shot the next morning or to be put into to the edit, and they pull up, they knock on the back door, which is the entrance to the studio, and somebody in a white shirt with a camera jumps out of the bushes and runs to a car and jumps in, and tears off down the street. And of course, they don't know what's going on. You don't know
Yeah.
what just happened. This guy was, and this kind of stuff was happening, and it started happening a whole lot, to the point where my wife finally said, "You either get out of this," because she finally started seeing things because she thought it was crazy, and she
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah.
And I was this close to having a family lockup, and then she saw stuff, and then she realized that I'd made her crazy, and you either get out now or I'm leaving you. So I did, um, and then it all stopped. I did one last radio show, and I did it with Jeff Rentz. And right after the show, a Sikorsky, a black one, hovered over my house in Granada Hills just around after sunset, and because I told my wife, "Yeah, that's it, no more." That was the last show I agreed to. And
Hmm.
then I heard the thump, 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 thump over the house, and so I go outside, which she didn't want me to do, and I look, and there it is, just hovering there, and the pilot's looking at me, and I got her to come out because I had to have her see it, and it
Yeah.
shined a light at both of us, and then it turned and went off and left, and that was the end of it. It all stopped.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Well, that's not a prank. That's who has access to those helicopters. So
yeah,
specifically, somebody was either wanted you to stop or wanted you to think they wanted you to stop.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he pointed his searchlight right at me, boop, like that, and he kind of waved, and I waved. I mean, what are you going to do? Remember, he
Yeah.
had a helmet on. He had a helmet on, and the visor was down, so it hit his face because he's that close that I could see him.
Yeah.
It was amazing, and at this point, my neighbors were used to it. They thought I was a drug dealer. They finally talked to my neighbor across the street. He says, "I thought you were dealing drugs." I said, "No, I work in the movie business and I've been public about my experiences." And he's like, "Oh my God, I hear all this time I thought you were, selling weed or something." And I said, "No, no, absolutely not."
Well,
So
these elements of theater are prevalent because if somebody wants to threaten you or stop you from doing something or doesn't want anybody to pay attention to you, they can do it without making you aware of it. They can make your life difficult or whatever and not, but the point of telling you about it is to let you know, for some reason they want you to know specifically and in a way that it's unambiguous. So, like I said, I don't know it's because you're saying things somebody doesn't want you to say, or they want you to think that you're saying things that people don't want you to say. Because maybe it's not a big problem, but if it looks like it's a big problem, that helps them, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
So it's like I got when I wrote Project Beta, I got very interested in intelligence and spy stuff, and I'm almost more interested in that in the book than the UFO stuff because that's the basis of the book. I tell people it's a spy story with UFO trappings.
that's a good catch. I mean, it's very interesting to me because
Yeah,
I don't
So
understand. I
go
don't
ahead.
know much about the intelligence world and how they think. It's something I don't want anything to do with. Uh, and they made it really clear that I was pushing it too far, and you need to back off. I mean, I appeared on all these big TV shows like Vicki Lawrence with Jacques Vallée, and that was a whole other story.
Yeah.
Getting to spend alone time with Jacques and the amazing things he told me about. But I think maybe I was getting too close to some. I don't know what. I don't know because after I quit, it all stopped, and then my late wife
Yeah.
passed away from cancer in 2013, and then in 2016, I decided that I'm not going to be quiet anymore, and I'm going to come back on the scene, but I'm going to make a film about my experiences,
Yeah.
and I did that, and it went over very
Is that
well.
the something is there?
But something is there,
Yeah,
yeah.
but something is there. I was going to say that you said that adults wouldn't talk to you about it. There's a character of a gardener in there that comes and talks to you about it, not
He was
directly.
he wasn't a gardener, I don't think.
Okay.
In fact, the real story is that he was Asian and he looked like Yoda. I mean, I remember his face, and I really loved him. And he had this big straw hat on, and our I couldn't find a location that suited that scene. That was Peter Fox, by the way, playing that role,
Hmm.
and so I needed something much deeper wooded, and I couldn't find it because we had a lot of thicket in the back in San Francisco, and I it was under there that he told me these things, and the light coming through the leaves kind of made him look green, um, and he was just this really neat guy. And then I remember years later talking to my mom, and I said his name was Mr. Lee, and I said, do you remember the gardener we used to have? He was Chinese, I think. She said we never had a Chinese gardener. We never had a gardener.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know what that was all about because, of course, before my mom passed away, she finally confessed to me that this was going on in the family and that she had experiences herself, but she had kept that from me all my life, pretty
Yeah, well,
much.
she's trying to protect you so you didn't get people calling you crazy or calling you on the phone and telling you cut it out or whatever. The
Yeah, which all happened, but
yeah,
I didn't have to do that. If my thinking was, and that's why I wrote what I wrote a couple of days ago, was that if I had stayed to that, I think this would have been the time it would have been okay to start talking about it and that things would really happen differently. I don't know that I did myself much good or anyone else by going public with this stuff at the time I did. And
well, you
I can't blame the visitors for what happened to me. I have to blame myself because I own that.
yeah,
I did agree not to talk about it when I was a child. But you look back on those things and think, oh, that was just my childhood imagination, especially in college and
yeah.
getting into the film industry like I did. It was all about the movies, and I was all full of myself being the big special effects guy and actor and movie maker and all that stuff. And you just move away from that and you think, oh, that was just all childhood nonsense until you start meeting other people who have the same experience in Whitley's book and everything else. And that's when you go, uh-oh. So, but you know all this. You've been studying this stuff forever.
I
So,
have, like you did ask me at the beginning if I'd ever seen anything. I did. I think I showed you a
yeah.
reproduction of it. It looks like a big, like eight-pointed,
Yes, you did.
spiky black star thing
You
with a
need to send
tail
me
coming
that
off of it.
picture. You
Yeah.
need to send me that picture so I can show it to everybody.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I have seen that before, not myself, but I've seen other people describe and show images
Really?
of such a thing.
Because
Yes.
I've never had anybody say they'd seen something like that before. Everybody I've shown it to said, "What the hell is that? That doesn't look
Did,
like anything I've ever
did
seen."
you show it to Whitley?
I think I may have. I've showed him all kinds of photos and things. I might have showed it to him, but if I haven't,
Yeah.
I should.
Yeah. It really stuck out to me for some reason. So, um,
It just doesn't make any sense. I saw it at the Santa Barbara airport hanging at the end of runway 15, the one that goes right out over the ocean, over a salt marsh. It was right in the flight path of that we had taken off from an hour before in a Cessna.
well, they love airports. I mean, you know that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I've got Oxnard over here. I've got the CB
Camarillo.
base. I got the CB base across the street from me. I can see the
Yeah.
trees on the base
You
on
got
the golf
Santa,
course.
yeah,
And then I've got Point
Camarillo, Santa
Magoo.
Paula.
And I got
Yeah.
Point Magoo.
Oh, yeah, the military. Yeah.
And of course, if but the last shot, the last scene, but something is there. That happened right here in my backyard,
Oh,
which
okay.
was, which was exasperating to be on the phone with Whitley, and then all of a sudden there's this enormous triangle coming over the house, and I'm like, I didn't even think about turning the phone around and shooting. I never thought that. I just stayed on the phone with Whitley and said, "You can't, you weren't ever going
You
to believe
wouldn't.
it." Yeah, it was just, it was incredible. And I've seen it. Mary's seen other triangles with me, and a platform that came out of the ocean in broad daylight. It's very busy around here. So it's very busy around airports too.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. I've never seen anything else besides that one thing at the Santa Barbara airport, very close, like maybe 100 yards away from me.
If
And
you
it
if
it
you're
wasn't moving either. It was like it was on a post, but it was above a salt marsh, and it was, it wasn't there before. I called the tower the next day and I said, because I had the number, we have it for paragliding so that we don't, so we can tell them when we're going to be in the airspace. And I called
right,
them and I said, did you guys see something at the end of 1-5 the other day at about 4 o'clock yesterday? And they said, no. I said, are you, and I called at the same time so I could probably hopefully get the same people on the same shift. I said, were you there yesterday? Yeah, we were here. We didn't see anything. I was like, okay. It was plain as day to me. It looked absolutely solid, but it didn't move. So that's my only dramatic, really, yeah, really dramatic sighting. The only other one I had was in Death Valley. There was a light very bright light that didn't move with the stars. It just sat
right.
there, very bright.
Just
And I
sat
think it
there,
was over the Nevada test area, possibly. So it might have had something to do with that.
maybe. Well, all the people, I mean, at my studio, we had a lot of, before COVID, we had a lot of interns or people coming there to learn the craft of making masks and special effects and stuff for movies. And we'd go out to dinner, and we went on a little camping trip all together, and they all saw stuff. They were skeptical until they saw things, and now they send me stuff. So it's
Yeah, well, you're probably a beacon.
I guess, that brings me to wanting to talk to you about you. We've got an art. You got an art show coming up. Uh,
That you're in.
on the yeah that I'm in on the 27th, and I put the image up now. I'll put it up again over the top of
Yeah,
this.
week from Saturday.
Right. And so you told me when you were at the studio visiting that you were also an art historian, and which is fascinating in itself. But what got you involved in your interest of the art that people are doing who have these experiences?
Uh Something like 4 or 5 years ago, I started writing a book, which I'm still writing, that had to do with what how does perception and memory and the human nervous system and neurophysiology of sight and all that, how does that enter and trauma, how does that enter into what people report that they saw? And I say that some people, they say, oh, you're saying that people made it up. And I say, no, I want to find out all the filters it's coming through to figure out possibly, maybe we can swim upstream in that and figure out what it is for people that haven't had the experience. Because if I'd had an experience like you did, I would have no doubt. But luckily or unluckily, I haven't. So, for the majority of people that are seeing these things, it's just a sighting, whether close or far away. I wanted to find out, the first thing was that I wanted to find out why it affected people this way. I wrote something along about 15 years ago called Are UFOs a Cosmic Art Project?
Ha,
And what I meant
good
by
title.
that was what is being communicated to us and why and how. And the other thing, the reason I went that way is because people that have, especially a close sighting, their lives change. It changes them forever. It immediately flips their worldview. And I thought, what else can do that in our experience? And the only thing I could think of was art. And then Whitley, the other day, he said, well, love does it. And I said, yeah, but something that happens in I guess you could fall in love in 5 minutes, but it's something that happens, 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes and your life is completely changed. The only analog for that to me was art. Um, and not even on, I mean, if you could affect people the way that UFOs do, you'd be the most famous artist in the world. If you could change somebody's life with an image or some kind of engineered experience, you'd be a multimillionaire as an artist. You could probably provide therapy for people in some way. Who knows? but I just thought, okay, what's the connection between art and perception and communicating somebody's experience? So I started asking around, and people just started showing me and giving me their art. And I thought maybe this is the direction I'm supposed to go. And so as a result of that, that's why we're having this art exhibit. It's the first thing I've done with this, and I asked friends, and I knew you're a friend now, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
everybody I know in this show I know personally. They're friends of mine. I trust them. Um, I want to help them get their art out there, and I want to help them communicate, if they want to, what's happened to them. And art communicates, as you know, in ways that are nonverbal and subconscious. And I think that might be part of trying to communicate that to people. And if you have people will look at a painting, and some people say, well, that's nice. Other people say, my kid could do that. Other people will say, that's pretty. And then some people will start crying or laughing or being very affected by something. They almost don't know why. I look at
Yeah.
some abstract paintings get me emotional, and I'm not sure why, but it's connecting with something in me that's making me emotional. I don't know why. So if we can get people who are good at portraying what their inner life was as a result of this, maybe we can communicate some of that to people that haven't had that experience. I mean, I look at the art that I have now that came from all these people, and I'm realizing, and I hope people realize when they come to the show, is that this is a real thing that really affects people. And if nothing else, where did you get the inspiration to do these things? And they say it's because they've had contact. And to me, you know, so you're getting, when you look at their paintings, you're getting a teeny tiny little bit of that life changing experience they've had. And maybe it'll either help you understand them or bring something out in you that's buried, just like seeing Disclosure Day for a lot of people, or
Yeah.
seeing the cover of
True.
Communion. So,
Mhm.
and that was a painting on the cover of Communion that people
Yeah.
saw, and suddenly it started this huge groundswell of, it connected with people, and they started remembering things. I've been to the archive of the Impossible, the Strieber letters, and I actually went through there looking for depictions of things that people had seen, and some of them were kind of amazing.
Yeah. I've seen some of those, and it's just, I wish the public could see them. Because they predate uh, uh, even communion, the drawings, and
Oh, do
yet,
they? Okay. I thought
yeah.
these are, it's called the Communion letters. I was under the impression
Well,
they
a
were
lot of these
sent to
people,
Whitney.
if you, I don't know how long it's been since you've read those letters, but
Oh, I see what you mean. They had experiences
yeah,
before Communion came out.
yeah, Whitley gave us permission to take the letters. Mary reads them, and I graphically bring them to life as best I can. And so I've had to go through them again and again and again. And the thing about it is it's the eyes mainly. And people describe different shapes of the head and all that stuff, but the eyes are fairly consistent as the really drawing you in type of thing. What I think the piece of art that really got Whitley, and it's probably the reason they wanted me involved, was this one.
Mm, yeah.
This was done in '93. You can see that the watermark is more recent, but down at the bottom you can
Yeah.
see this
The
painting is
signature. Yeah.
it's out there somewhere. I don't know who has it. I wish I still had it. Um, but this one really turned heads for a very, very long time. I had so many people writing to me and everything else about that's what they look like. They're painfully thin, and these huge heads, and there's a smaller one and the bigger one with the bigger eyes that wrap around the, and um, that was the one that really kind of set things all off for me. That one painting. I mean, I've done hundreds of them, but
Yeah.
that particular one was really it. And again, you can see those eyes, and there's those same eyes that are on his book cover.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the art show, because I really want people to come to this, and I'm going to be there on the first night, the opening night, and it would be great to have people from the Ventura County and LA County come to this and share in um, on talking about this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be a very non-judgmental group of people and atmosphere where it's very, very safe. I think that people should know more about this. So anything you can say more about it might get a
Well,
few more.
there is an opening night, and I will speak. The filmmaker Dean Alioto is going to speak
Hmm.
um, um, at first, and then uh, what I wanted to do, and this is what we're planning, is that every artist in the show that can make it, which is local Southern California people, which is 5 of them actually, um, will sit down in front of everybody, and Dean and I, and we will talk about what inspired you to do this.
Yeah,
Why did you want to be in this show? How do you think the art communicates to people something that you wanted to communicate? Did you even want to communicate it before the show? Who knows? Because I know a couple of the people, they actually did the art specifically for the show. I mean, actually, everybody did the art specifically for the show, but they did their experience art specifically for the show.
right.
And I want to ask them, maybe like put a spotlight on the painting and say, hey, Steve, what were you thinking of when you did that painting? What are you trying to communicate to people, if anything? And what do you want people possibly to take away from that? Unless you just would, because a couple of the artists said, I don't want to talk about what the painting means. I would rather have people figure it out themselves. And I totally understand that. For the same reason Kubrick or David Lynch would never tell you what they meant by their
Yeah,
films.
I was just going to say that you took the thoughts right out of my head. It works that way with film too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you tell somebody what's going on or what you think you meant, that takes away from the variety, and it takes away from a personal experience of the art, because somebody has told you what to think rather than you co-creating your meaning with the filmmaker. You know what I mean? And they both said, I think Kubrick said this too. Kubrick and Lynch, they said people may come, think of stuff or appreciate it in a way that we never planned or thought of. And that's wonderful. That's great, because that makes it a more personal experience for them. And they'll remember it. And the rest of they can open up to the rest of the movie and see these images can wash over them, and they will have an individual experience of it that nobody else did, which is, what more could you ask from your art?
Yeah, I mean, I became a filmmaker because of 2001.
Hmm. I
That
think you
was,
told me that. Yeah.
yeah, that was what started it all off for me. And of course, you saw the influences at my at my studio. So,
Yeah, it's my dad's favorite film, along with, guess which is his other favorite film? Day the Earth Stood Still.
oh, I'll be damned. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, I have a DVD box set that they
Uh-huh.
released of the movie. They had the screenplay in it and all
Ah.
kinds of great stuff in it. Of course, Robert Wise has signed it, but I had worked with Robert Wise on Star Trek: The Motion Picture,
Uh-huh.
and so when I went to see him to have him sign it a second time, he said, "Well, Steve," he says, "it's already signed." And I said, "Well, I just wanted you to sign it here, and I just wanted to say hi again after all these years." And
Yeah.
that was kind of neat. But yeah, that was a great film. Also, Arrival was terrific. I thought. I just
One of my
loved it.
favorites ever, because it's
Yeah,
so oblique. And to
yeah,
me, that feeling of uncanny obliqueness is very much closer to an experience of a non-human than um, a literal view. And you don't, I'm sorry they even showed the aliens' legs walking around.
yeah. That's
If
true.
if they'd only showed the language and some vague thing behind it creating it, that might have, who knows? Maybe the studio forced Villeneuve to do that. I don't know.
I
But
don't know.
but I love that film for that reason, and also because it has to deal. And the Ted Chiang story originally had to deal with time, and the
Right.
basic. I think the basic message of that story, the original short story, is, if you knew the future, would you live it the way that it's? What would you feel about it if you knew you couldn't get away from it in your particular time stream? And this one adds a few more level. Arrival adds a few more levels to that, and adds a character that you can, you kind of wonder. I was like, it's not aliens, but she knows what's going to happen in her own future and who's going to die and all that, and she still goes through with it.
Yeah,
And that to me is amazing. That was an
yeah,
amazing part of the thing. Apart from the awe of going into the ship, and they didn't look like flying saucers; they were big round rocks. I
yeah.
thought that was
Well,
wonderful.
yeah, me too. It's funny that a lot of people. I know in the business and stuff, they didn't like the movie. And I always got the same thing. I didn't get it. Okay. So anyway,
I whatever it was, I got it on a deep level. It's one of my favorite
yeah,
films, science
yeah,
fiction
mine too.
films,
I've seen it
and
twice, and
yeah, I've
I
probably
would
seen it 5 times. But on my website for yeah, on my website for my show, which is in hiatus now, but I'm bringing it back. There's a loop of the alien doing the alien writing with the circle, just going over and over and over again, because
I
that
love.
just fascinated me.
I downloaded what every one of them means, and I've been
Uh
using it as an avatar. Um,
huh.
Before we head on out here, I wanted to show you some images of how far this goes back for me, and I've been finding. I found a drawing from 1978 that I did, and one of the things I noticed was that when I was doing the grays, they weren't wearing the eye covers. Now this was done for a TV show, you know.
Was that
No,
the
it was
Barney and Betty Hill one? Was that Interesting
no, but
Journey? Okay,
this
they
was a
kind of look
film.
like it a little bit.
They used the cat from space set, and I can't remember the name of this film, and I wish I could, and it's not in my list of films I've done. But
Uh
this
huh.
is me in the backyard of my Burbank house back in 1977 or 78, right in there, wearing a Close Encounters T-shirt.
Yeah.
And both these were foam rubber heads, and the eyes could move on them and all that stuff. And that
Mm.
was something I did for a job. And how do I get rid of this now? I also had done this, and this I wish I had this still because this is right out of Travis's book. What the
Oh, okay.
beings,
Yeah. Uh
yeah,
huh.
this, and it was in color and everything. Again, this was during that same period, um, and you know, I just kept getting asked to do this stuff. Whitley and I had an agreement, and so I made a mask
Uh huh.
that you could wear of the communion lady. This is me sculpting the clay.
Hmm.
Uh, there was so much stuff I was doing back then. Nobody remembers it today. This is me on the set of the Confirmation. It was a 2 hour special that was on NBC. It
Hmm.
had Jesse Long on it, and they set him up and made him out to look like a liar when they did the lie detector test. But I had made the aliens for it, and again, I had a compromise with the studio. They wanted them to have muscles and stuff, you know, but the heads are still that cover, and there's a hybrid
Yeah.
baby. So I
Yeah.
mean, I have done so much of this stuff. I could bore us for hours with pictures. Um, but when I quit and got out of the scene because of my wife, when I came back on the scene, no one remembered anything. Few people did. No one remembered my work and how it had influenced what we know today in
Yeah.
the imagery of these beings. So that's really fascinating. Mary's writing a whole big long article about it, and she's found all this stuff on me that I didn't even know existed. So that should be really interesting to see what people think about that. Um, is there anything else you'd like to talk about in our? Well, we have some time left.
Um, yeah, just that I think that, as I said before, I think the connection between art and the humanities and this and the phenomenon is a source of data that's been ignored. I think I said this in a couple of talks here. I said, if we can log somehow people's feelings,
Hmm.
their emotional reactions, their memories of what happened before and after, which no investigator goes out and talks to witnesses about that. And the one thing that Earl Grey used to do, our friend Earl Grey Anderson, the one question, um, the late Earl Grey Anderson, who was horribly missed, the one thing that he told me that I thought was genius was he said, and he was MUFON investigator for years. He said at the end of an interview with a witness, I would ask them, "Is there anything else that you think is a kind of might not be related that was strange or struck you as strange?" Or he said, "And I won't judge you. I won't, you know."
He
And
never
he
would.
said he got the weirdest stories ever. And he got to the point where he said, and I use this in lectures now, if there wasn't something completely off about somebody's account, he tended to doubt it. He said the ones that seemed to be true, or the ones that he trusted, were ones that didn't make any sense. The ones that had an internal logic to them, he said he was a little less trustful of, because that would mean, if you're making up a story or you've confabulated a lot or put a bunch of layers on something, you want it to make sense. That's how we remember things. But he said, yeah, the stuff that didn't make sense was the stuff that he thought was interesting. And it recalled something Carla Turner said to me. She said, I think the answer is going to lie in the anomalous details. She said that in like 94 or 5.
Yeah. No, I miss her. I knew Carla, and she was amazing.
Yeah, she was. I used to talk to her quite a lot, and I was stunned when she passed away because I didn't even know she was sick. Her husband didn't say, Elton didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. So it was a shock. Kind of, Rosemary Ellen Guiley was too, because I don't think she said anything to anybody.
Well, with Earl, I mean, after every show we did, when we were doing a lot of live streams, he'd call us afterwards in the car, and we talked to him driving home, and he was complaining about his hip, and he'd been doing that for a while, and then one day he said, "Well, I'm finally going to have this go looked at," and because he had been in that accident, and
Mm-hmm.
he figured that's what it was, and by the time he looked at it, it was too late. And literally 2 weeks later, he was gone. And it was
Yeah,
just like he was just in our life. We were talking to him every day. He was texting
yeah,
us in the morning, and
yeah. Me
we were
too.
working together. Yeah, and it's like that. He was gone, and it
Yeah,
just
out of left field. Yeah, he
it
called me and said, "Hey, I'm going into the doctor,"
yeah,
and he sent me a picture of his starting his chemo. He's just sitting there waving and smiling at me. And then
yeah.
about a week later, he couldn't talk to me, and then he talked to me one day and said, "Hey, what can you come down and visit?" Of course I can, but I can't come. It was Friday. I said, "I can't come tomorrow. I can come Sunday." He said, "Yeah, come Sunday." Sunday, I call and call and call and call, and nobody picks up his phone. And then I find out he'd taken a turn for the worst, and by Tuesday he was gone. So it was, yeah, it was like it was totally blindsided everybody.
Yeah,
And
go to the doctor, people. If you think something's wrong, don't put it off. It's just
yeah, exactly.
they can
It's
they can do a
like
lot
when you get
today.
older. Yeah,
They may be still using stone knives and bear skins, but they work. I know
yeah,
plenty of survivors
yeah.
and I'm one of them from
Hmm.
bladder cancer. So, and they caught
Yeah.
it early. And
I've got a bunch of friends that have gone to, have recovered from cancer. And so, yeah, you got to get over there. And even if you don't think anything's going wrong, when you get to a certain age in your 50s, 60s, yeah, you better go ask.
how about 74,
Yeah.
which is what I am. And one of the things that you mentioned that caught my attention is reporting on what happens, not just about I saw a craft and or I had this interaction with this non-human intelligence. What about your life as a result of it?
Yeah.
And
Life
and
changes.
that's what okay, so I didn't cover hardly any of that. I did the talk show because I did lots of those.
Well, they don't want
In
to hear that stuff. Not in a talk
but
show.
no, but I'm talking about in but something is there. About the most I included about that was um, the talk show. And the script I'm writing now, which I'm not waiting on anybody to fund, I'm going to make the film myself with my own money, like I did the first one,
Hmm.
uh, is going to be about that very thing and about that moment when my wife realized that I wasn't just doing artwork for my hypnotherapist. I was going to her to learn about possibly to get more detail. I remembered so much, but I wanted to see if I was getting more details out of it. And she literally just freaked out at me. I'll never forget that scene. And
Hmm.
that's kind of how the film starts. It starts
Yeah.
with that interaction, and she is terrified, uh, more than I ever was, of what I just told her,
Yeah.
because what it meant to her and how it affected my career and my friends around me that backed away and my professional friends that backed away, and not all of them. Some of them had to come to me, take me aside and say, "Don't you tell this to anybody, but I believe you because this happened to me. I was a radar operator in the Army, and
Hmm.
the things we saw." And, I got that kind of stuff, but it still didn't help the career. Luckily, I got hired on Sightings and Paranormal Borderline and
Yeah.
NBC and the UFO files I worked on. They all loved
Yeah.
hiring me, and I
Of
did
course.
visual effects for them and everything. That kept me going for a long time. But I want to cover that part of the experience because I think it would be very helpful and very healing to a lot of people that are still in the closet
Yeah.
that I don't want them to think that I didn't go through that I didn't have, when I finally talked to my mom and she had been watching television because we didn't talk much at all. And she had been watching me on television. And, she said, I saw you with that Whitley Strieber. And I thought, oh boy, here it goes. She's going to dig in on me. And she didn't. Then she
Oh,
told me about the black thing in the sky, blotting out the stars and shining a light at her on the porch with my grandmother. And it went from there.
yeah.
So these
Hmm.
things I think are every bit as important to share with people involved in this as the encounters themselves. There will be that in this next film, but that's not
Hmm.
going to be. And what you talked about is exactly, I agree with you that this is really important, this aspect of
Yeah.
how
It's
it,
a data source.
yeah, and it affects people's lives and just
Yeah. Or people that
not
are
the
trying
best.
to help them or figure this out. I
Yeah,
was I was at when I was at MUFON, people are saying, "Well, how can you get people's feelings and all that in a database?" And I say, "You can do that now. Use natural language programming, get everything they said, dump it into a database, and start doing queries.
yeah,
Start doing AI queries. Um, what's the is there a connection between the latitude of what this happened and somebody's childhood, or just
yeah,
anything?"
yeah. I
I mean,
was always
just an
there.
example. I don't think there is one, but you could find things that you didn't realize before, patterns that were you didn't know were there. Valet said that's what he's going to do for the rest of the time he's on this earth, is just to do his own research with all this data that he couldn't do before.
Yeah, because now we have it. Even just going back in my own past, everywhere I lived, everywhere I stayed with my grandmothers, I was near a military base or some kind of military facility, or living literally under a hill that had a Nike base on the top of it,
Hmm.
uh, and an Air Force base out in San Anselmo. And that's where I was seeing so much stuff. And even as a kid, I knew my aircraft and I knew what I was seeing wasn't ours,
Yeah, yeah.
especially back in the late 50s and 60s. We didn't have hovering hat shaped objects that glowed over a Nike base at night that my friend that spent the night saw with me,
Hmm.
but could hardly keep his eyes open. He kept falling asleep and passing out. I had to drag
Huh.
him back to the house. Yeah, just all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But when you go back and you've lived all this time and you look back and you see it like never before, but you had to live this long and have this experience to know that. So are
yeah.
you
Or
planning another book?
yeah, I'm work all the stuff I've been just talking about. I'm going deeply into that. I mean, I'm looking at um, the neurobiology of sight. I'm looking at what trauma does to memory. I'm looking at, as far as the art is, what are there colors or shapes or whatever that are attractive to the eye? Because most I asked a question in one of my essays: are there any UFOs that have like bad color schemes? As with their lights or whatever, in the way we are, because not too many UFOs are ugly. They're very slick or symmetrical or whatever. And is that because that's what ships look like? Or is that because what we remember because it's pleasing to our eyes? Or
Could
maybe
be.
it's because, maybe whoever is controlling them think that. I have no idea. But
And
I
then
want
there's
to.
been
Mhm.
there's been videos of like flying roast turkeys and stuff that I know you've seen them. These organic looking things that are laughable, but they're real and they're in camera. And I know that because of the work I do in visual
Yeah.
effects. It's easy for me to tell that, well, whatever this is, it's on camera and
Yeah.
it's flying
Especially if
along.
it's older.
Yeah, especially if it's older and it looks like some kind of roast turkey or something flying along. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. Everything I've seen has been usually symmetrical, usually round, and when I've seen it at night, you could see where it is because um, the circular shape of it was like a hole in the sky, and it
Hmm.
blotted out the stars as it moved across them until it got close. Um, and that's what my mom described too, exactly. So, and then you see the metallic sh- sheen on it, A
Hmm.
lot of times they weren't lit up bright at all. It's like they're trying not to be seen.
Yeah.
So
I do remember it's Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican film director,
yeah,
right?
oh sure,
He said
yeah.
he saw a UFO and he was talking about it, and he said he was really disappointed because it was messy and ugly. He said, "I want to see a nice, slick, saucer or a triangle or something." He goes, "No, it was just." He said it looked like bad 1950s science fiction, but maybe that's what's coming through his filter, whatever it was.
There's the filters. What I saw that night with the triangle, I mean, I wasn't expecting to see anything at all, and there it was. And I can describe to you that there was some sort of, it was like looking at it like through a heat wave. It sort of warbled a bit.
Yeah,
Not
yeah. A
the
lot of
whole
people
thing
have said that.
not so much the whole thing as the little pinpoint lights at each corner of it, which were flickering. And
Yeah,
there was no orangey, purpley red source in the center of it. Although I know people have seen that, and I've seen videos of that, and I've seen it also on the saucers, it had none of that, and it was so silent. It was really spectacular. It really was something.
yep. I mean, that may happen to me someday. I don't know. I just have to, I have to be, I don't know, prepared. When I saw that thing, I just said, okay, I guess I got to go now, which is, why did I do that? Why didn't
I
I
don't
just
know.
go over and drive as closer and look at it from another angle? I just left after looking at it for probably 2 or 3 minutes because it didn't do anything.
And now that I have a brand new Celestron binoculars, a really good color night scope, and
Hmm.
a few other high tech devices, I haven't been seeing much at all. It's like I don't even know if it would even be worth it to me to capture something on film or on video, even with
It
the
wouldn't.
really. It wouldn't, because people would never believe it, especially with my background. I'd be screwed. But I did capture that video for Whitley with Roger Lear, the Camarillo UFO that he has talked about and shown on his show several times, and that
Hmm.
was done through a Celestron with a Sony 8 millimeter Handycam. Um, but it shows clearly something that's not very explainable at all. So I was lucky to get that, and that's only because of Roger Lear, because he kept telling me about it, and finally I went over to look at it. But the first night I looked at it through binoculars, and it was saucer shaped. It looked like a sombrero. Again, it had this saucer shape to it, and I went,
Yeah.
"That's not, yeah," and it's moving. So I went home and I set up my C8 Celestron 2000 millimeter lens with the camera attached to it. Went back the next day, and I saw something. It was the same thing and the same coming the same direction, but through the telescope that looked entirely different.
Hmm.
So,
Yep. That's
well,
like, that's what happens. Yeah, I could go on, but if we run out of
yeah,
time,
me
that's
too.
fine.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance to talk to you a bit more at the show. And I hope that if you're in the local area, you come down and meet Greg and meet uh, Dean and the artists there. I think it's going to be a really interesting night, really nice experience for people who have an interest in this subject or are involved in it themselves.
All right. Yeah. If I think when you post this, just put a link to the tickets, and if there are any left the night of, then you could probably
Yeah,
buy them at the door. I don't know if there'll be any left. I really have no idea.
yeah.
I mean,
And
it
thanks
could
for
sell
putting this
out. It
on.
might not. Sure. No,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to do it, Steve. I don't know why. I just got pulled into it.
We're
So it
never
must.
going to put you. Yeah, there's something going on there, but we'll get to that on another show.
Okay.
I have found that people who have this intensity level of interest in this subject, that there's something else going on there, and like in the movie, they don't they don't want to remember. It's
Yeah.
okay, leave it the way it is. So,
Yeah,
but
I kind of don't want to either.
there you go. It's
I'm
like
okay with
Emily
my
Blunt.
life right now. I don't need more complications. But it might
Yeah.
happen someday. I don't know.
Well, maybe it'll just happen when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
You know. Well, Greg, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, and it made for a really fascinating hour for me and for the people who watch this show, which will be many when it gets released next not this Friday, but the Friday right before the show. So I'm kind
Okay.
of putting you ahead of everybody else because of the show.
Thank you.
So we get some
So,
people to come in
yes,
there. So I
act
got,
quickly if you want to come. So
yeah,
it'll
I
be
got to
fun.
get busy editing tomorrow. And if you have anything you want to send me image wise to cut into the show, please do.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Greg.